Welcome back, philosophers. Today, we're tackling one of the most enigmatic, brain-bending thinkers of the 20th century, Ludwig Wittgenstein. If you've ever heard his name and thought, sounds like a guy who'd ruin a perfectly good pub quiz, stick with me. Wittgenstein's life and work are a wild ride, part mystery, part revolution, and all about how language messes with our heads. Let's start with the man himself. Ludwig Wittgenstein was born in 1889 in Vienna into a family so wealthy they made the Kardashians look like they're scraping by. His father was a steel magnate, one of the richest men in Europe, and their home was like a cultural salon. Brahms and Mahler dropped by for tea. But Ludwig wasn't your typical silver spoon kid. He was intense, restless, and a bit of a loner. Picture a guy who'd rather stare at a wall for 3 hours than make small talk. He was that guy. As a young man, Wittgenstein studied engineering, first in Berlin, then in Manchester, where he got obsessed with aeronautics. He was designing propellers of all things when he stumbled across a problem that sent him down a rabbit hole, the foundations of mathematics. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about truth, logic, and how we even know what we know. So naturally he ditched propellers and headed to Cambridge in the UK to study with Bertrand Russell, the rock star philosopher of the day. Russell thought Wittgenstein was either a genius or completely unhinged. Spoiler, he was a bit of both. Now let's talk about Wittgenstein's first big idea, the one that made him famous, the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. Yes, it sounds like a spell from Harry Potter, but it's actually a short, dense book he wrote during World War I. Wittgenstein didn't just sit in a cosy library to write it. He was in the trenches, serving in the Austrian army, dodging bullets and scribbling philosophy in his notebook. The Tractatus is like a philosophical grenade. It's only 70 pages, but it tries to solve all of philosophy in one go. His big idea, language mirrors reality. Words and sentences are like pictures of the world. If you say, the cat is on the mat, you're painting a little picture of a fact. Simple, right? Except Wittgenstein argued that everything we can meaningfully say has to fit this picture theory. If it doesn't, like a lot of philosophy, religion or ethics, it's just nonsense. Not bad nonsense, mind you, but nonsense all the same. But here's the plot twist. Wittgenstein thought most philosophical problems come from us misusing language. We get tangled up in words, thinking we're solving deep mysteries when we're just confused about grammar. His solution? Stop arguing about vague stuff like what is truth and get clear on how language actually works. At the end of the Tractatus, he famously wrote, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." In other words, if you can't say something clearly, shut up. It's like he was telling philosophers to take a vow of silence, but here's where it gets even wilder. After dropping this bombshell of a book, Wittgenstein thought he'd solved all of philosophy. So, he quit. He gave away his massive inheritance. Imagine handing over millions to your siblings because you don't want the hassle, and went to live a simple life. He became a school teacher in rural Austria, teaching kids math. He even worked as a gardener's assistant at a monastery. This wasn't some hipster gap year. Wittgenstein genuinely thought philosophy was over. Of course, it wasn't. By the late 1920s, he realised the Tractatus didn't solve everything. His own ideas started bugging him. So he went back to Cambridge. And this is where things get really interesting. Wittgenstein's later philosophy, especially in his book Philosophical Investigations, is a complete U-turn. He starts questioning his own picture theory. Language, he now says, isn't just about picturing facts. It's a messy, living thing. It's like a toolbox full of different tools for different jobs. Sometimes you're describing a cat on a mat, sure, but other times you're joking, you're promising, you're praying, or you're just yelling, ouch. Language doesn't have one big rule. It's a collection of games we play, each with its own rules. This idea of language games is Wittgenstein's second big hit. He's saying that words only mean something because of how we use them in specific contexts. Take the word game itself. Is chess a game? Sure. Is war a game? Kind of, but not really. Is flirting a game? Well, yeah, Sometimes. The meaning depends on the situation, the people, and the culture. Wittgenstein's point is that we don't need a perfect definition of game to understand it. We get it from seeing how the words used in life. This was revolutionary because it pulled the rug out from under philosophers who were obsessed with finding universal definitions for things like truth or justice. Wittgenstein's like, stop chasing your tail. Look at how people actually talk. Wittgenstein didn't just write philosophy, he lived it. He'd pace around during lectures, muttering to himself, stopping mid-sentence to glare at a student who looked confused. His classes at Cambridge were legendary, not because he was charming, but because he was so raw. He'd wrestle with ideas out loud, sometimes saying, "I'm such an idiot," in the middle of a thought. Students loved him or feared him, sometimes both. He wasn't trying to be a guru, he just couldn't fake it. He once said he wanted to write a philosophy book entirely in the form of jokes. Imagine that, a philosophy stand-up routine. But Wittgenstein's life wasn't all quirky anecdotes. He struggled with himself, he was deeply private, and he wrestled with guilt and self-doubt. During World War II, he worked as a hospital porter, refusing special treatment because he wanted to be useful, not famous. He died in 1951 from cancer, still working on his ideas, still unsatisfied. His last words were, "Tell them I've had a wonderful life," which is wild because by most standards, his life looked like a roller coaster of self-imposed hardship. Wittgenstein's ideas are everywhere. When you argue on social media about what freedom means, or when you wonder if AI can really understand human language, you're bumping into Wittgenstein's territory. He reminds us that language isn't a perfect machine, it's a human mess full of quirks and context. His work forces us to slow down, look at how we talk, and ask, are we even making sense in a world drowning in hot takes and misinformation? That's a question worth asking. Wittgenstein wasn't trying to give us answers, he was trying to make us better at asking questions. He once compared philosophy to rearranging furniture in a room. You don't create anything new, but you see the room differently. That's what he does. He makes you see language, thought, and life in a new light. So, next time you're stuck in a pointless argument, channel Wittgenstein. Ask yourself, is this a real problem, or are we just playing different language games? Thanks for joining me today. If this episode made your brain hurt, good. That's the point. Until next time, keep questioning, keep talking, and maybe, just maybe, try to stay silent about what you can't say.